warm welcome to you all to the celebration of the 89th anniversary of the first cricket test match played on Indian soil between India and England from 15th to the 18th of December 1933 at this ground, Bombay Gymkhana ground. We have an entertained, entertaining evening lined up for you all. First up, we will hear about the historic test match. We will hear about the memories of this club and relevance of India versus England games by Ayaz Memon. We will then have a chat hosted by Shishir Hattangadi with India's best left-arm fast bowler Zaheer Khan and Mumbai's run machine Jatin Paranjape.
Thank you so much, and thank you for coming. I think this is a great honor to be with all of you. And when I got a call saying that you'd like me to host this program, I said, "Why me?" And they said, "Because you're the closest in terms of age for the Jardine era." So here I am. That was 1933, and of course, a historic moment in Indian cricket. The first Test match played here. A couple of great incidents. That's why I've got these little notes sent by gentlemen who probably were closer to that era in age. And the first story that comes up of that great match, was that this match was actually, I don't know whether it's true, but somebody told me this, was funded by the Maharaja of Patiala. And the Maharaja of Patiala actually played with Jardine before the series started up north, Viceroys versus Patiala 11 or whatever. And Lala Amarnath apparently used to be one of the house guests of the Maharaja of Patiala. In those days, there was no IPL, but the Maharajas looked after teams. Sunny would know that a lot of players were actually guests of the royal families. So Lala Amarnath apparently told the Maharaja, "Okay, I want to play this test match," which is strange. There was no selection committee or no committee to pick selectors. Uh, so apparently he came by train and got off at VT station just down there. And he walked down, he called Maharaja Patiala and said, "I've reached Bombay Gym." And as he came past Fort Vijay, he was stopped by the security. They said, "You can't enter this club. This is for Europeans." He said, "No, I want to play the test match." Bizarre. But he then came all around, came to the entrance, gave the reference of the Maharaja, got into the nets, and got 100 in the test match. Cricket is different in those days. And it's one of those stories that, really tell you how the game has changed. The game has actually evolved. And for me, to just be sitting in this august company is a matter of great privilege. I want to go into details later, but I'll start with Ivory first. I call him Ivory for obvious reasons. Ayaz, of course, one of the great raconteers of the game, storytellers, watched so much cricket, and of course, been a part of so many Indian wins, India-England wins. So first, of course, I'd like to ask him one thing: his memories of this club, his memories of India-England. Ayaz?
Thank you, Shishir, and thank you everybody for actually having Bombay Gymkhana for having me here. When he said raconteur, I almost heard racketeer, one of the first racketeers about this game. So just
We'll come to that later in the
come to that.
conversation.
We'll come to that later. But Bombay Gymkhana, Indian cricket, sports, and especially Indian cricket, because it's inseparable. The first ever Test match that India's played in India was at this ground. And when you have this kind of an ambience, this kind of an environment, this kind of an ethos, it might sound a little esoteric or surreal, but when I first walked into Bombay Gymkhana, it was almost, and I had some knowledge about the fact that first ever Test match was played here. It's almost as if the walls spoke to you. This lovely, fantastic clubhouse spoke to you, and you started imagining, what it must have been like when India played England. Douglas Jardine, a boy born in Bombay, leading the English team here, the same team which had defanged Bradman in Australia. So that was the bodyline series. Straight from there, they came here and they played against India, and the first Test match was here. And well, India lost the match, but it set India off, I think, on a journey. Started in 32, 33 in England, and then, of course, this match. And look where we are now. At that point in time, everything about cricket was controlled or charted out by England. England was Lords was the mecca of cricket. England was the bastion of the home of cricket. Today, India is not just the mecca of cricket, but also the El Dorado. This is where all the moolah is. This is where the opportunities are. This is where everybody wants to come. Whether you are an English cricketer or an Australian or wherever you are from. So I think that the first ever Test match always has a special first ever Test match in India always has a special place. I was always a little miffed that not enough was done to celebrate that occasion by the Gymkhana itself for many years. And I wrote some columns about it. Some of them were caustic, and some members then kind of privately told me, but why, it's still a great place to be. I said, it's a great place to be, but it could have done far more to celebrate that occasion. I'm so happy that this is being done now. And the 90th year will be done on a far greater scale. So I think that India England has got perhaps the longest legacy from all cricketing nations. The rivalry with Pakistan stands apart. With Australia now, it's got a pedestal of its own. But when you talk of India and England, obviously it traces back. There's so many inflection points, such an intermingling of politics, of culture, of the evolution of nationhood, getting nationhood, and so on and so forth. One of the things which really disappointed me, you talked about Indo in English cricket, was disappointed me was in the 2011 World Cup, which Zach was one of the heroes, which India went on to win. And if I remember correctly, the first match between India and England was called off or didn't take place because the stadium wasn't ready in Kolkata, and it just kind of astonished me that a match like this, India versus England in the World Cup, should not be played because some project has not been completed on time. It just showed our lack of sense of history. I think a lot of that is changing and changing for the better, I might add. Where I'm concerned, the first ever match I went and reported live was the Jubilee Test match in 1979 at the Wankhede Stadium. Mike Braley's team, the Indian team led by Gundappa Vishwanath, and memorable for many things. One was, of course, uh, Bob Taylor being recalled by Gundappa Vishwanath, an act of great sportsmanship, I might add, which may not pass scrutiny of players, former players, coaches, and officials now, but at that point in time, it seemed to me the most apt thing to do because this is what cricket was all about. There is an etiquette about cricket which you can't squander. But that's my view. It might be a little fuddy-duddy view, but that's the way I feel. So that was the first match, memorable in many ways, or in all ways. India didn't win that match, but some great performances. Ian Botham, this magnificent gesture from Gundappa Vishwanath, and so on. And then there's been a lifetime of covering cricket here and in England, uh, which I must add, not just about India, but the the at the start it was mentioned about the 1983 World Cup, and I saw a couple they make 175 not out, which is to my mind the greatest one-day innings played even now. People may have made 200 plus and so on, but that is the greatest. But what I also remember is that when India reached the final, and there was bewilderment, there was astonishment. And I remember going to Grace Gates at Lords because earlier we were not given passes for the final. Only if your team enters the final could you get a pass, unless you happen to be part of the English team. We were not. And when we went to collect our passes, we had these, stiff upper lip stewards at Grace Gate saying, "Oh, now we've got Gandhi coming to Lords." And that was the that was the year when Gandhi, the movie had released with Richard Attenborough, and Gandhi had become a global name once again, so to speak. So uh, there are obviously many connections with English cricket and Indian cricket and India England cricket, but I'll let you carry the baton from here, and we'll pitch in by whenever possible
Thank you,
as you
Ayaz.
want.
That movie Gandhi also had a Hattangadi, who's not my mother, uh, Rohini. Anyway, coming back to cricket, of course, the whole demonization of Douglas Jardine going back to 1933, where he just came back from the Bodyline series because they attacked Bradman on his rib cage and his body. And obviously, somebody who's taken over 600 wickets for India would have a different point of view. We'll get to your other stories later, Zaheer, because then in '76 we had this great incident of Vaseline being used by John Lever, and then somebody up on this stage played a naughty boy using jelly beans. So we'll want a bit of that. In 2009. So what is the? I'll come to the jelly beans later. First, let's talk about your view on the Douglas Jardine in 1933 was most hated man because he tried to find a way to get Bradman out. And two is of course as a fast bowler, I think you'll have your point of view, which is very important because the game has changed, evolved over the years. So you could just stick to that. We'll stick to the jelly beans later.
Okay, so I think the point which you're trying to make about how the game is evolving, it has always been about the bat versus ball, right? So you got to find answers. You got to have that creative mind to understand what you can do to get the better of other. So I think I look at the game like that. That's what playing the game has always been about. You have to ask batters questions, and you got to find out ways. So I think it was a process of that. And when you're talking about the great Bradman, he was pretty much ungettable. He was very hard to get out. So as a bowler, I think you got to be creative, and I think that must be the thought process. That must be the base thought process. You got to then analyze and find all the loopholes. So I know that the jelly bean story you want to keep aside, but
No,
it's
no, it's coming. It's
always
coming.
it's always about finding the loopholes. That's the game of cat and mouse which always goes on, I think. So Jardine found those loopholes, and
Yeah,
that's why the new rules been inducted
yeah,
now,
absolutely.
and you can't bowl that many
But
bounces.
Zahir, I want to ask you a question. You came from a small town from Srirampur, first come to Bombay to play club cricket. If I remember correctly, I don't know, but National Cricket Club would have been your first club. But obviously, you must have passed Bombay Gymkhana, seeing this
Well,
monumental structure. I want
that's
you to talk about that.
that's actually the interesting one. So when you asked by that question, actually I was thinking, okay, I need to start my today's talk with that, because I got a very special connection with Bombay Gym. As you're talking about the Bombay Gym speaks to you, I think it spoke to my dad for sure. And thank God that maybe the security guy that day was on a leave. Lala Amarnath, you said, got stopped here. But in my case, I didn't get stopped. I somehow found my way with my dad here, and my dad used to come to Mumbai quite often. He's a regular visitor, and he has finished his college from here. So he's a national college student. Even though I was born and brought up in Sri Rampur, he had that connect. So he was very well versed with what's happening in Bombay. Not so much with cricket, but he knew that the Bombay Gymkhana is the place, where if I want to start playing cricket or want to explore things around cricket, this is the place he thought of. And I consider myself lucky, because if Lala Amarnath can get stopped and I didn't, so there's definitely that destiny's hand was on my head, that I've somehow managed to come here. And my dad obviously spoke to someone here. I don't remember exactly who it was, but I never got to say thank you to that gentleman, because actually he was the one who advised us to go to these clubs here. So he basically advised us that, okay, you can't come for coaching here, because the fees here right now you can't even think of. You got to be a member here. He explained to me the whole process very patiently, and didn't really look for security, saying that, oh, these guys shouldn't be here. So it was very considerate of him. Must be the cricket lover, the passionate follower of the game, which I see a lot of faces here who I'm familiar with over the years, have been a very great followers of the game. That's very important, that you have that passion. So that was my first introduction to Bombay Gym, and that's how it started for me of my journey in cricket in Mumbai. I went to Sasanian Club, and then that's where I met Mr. Chavan. Right. So before I landed up in national, so because everyone knows here what my story has been, but maybe they don't know this part. How I landed up at National Cricket Club, and how I met Sudhir Naik sir, Paradkar sir, and all that. Before that, I met Chavan there, and he asked me to come for practices the next day. I was actually booked to go back to Sri Rampur because we didn't have any luck with finding a club or finding what's the process of me starting cricket or playing cricket. Yeah, went for the nets in the morning, and I still remember distinctly and clearly that there was this kid who's batting to him. After that, he finished, and as he was unpacking, and I was also just kind of resting there, having a sip of water and all. The guy couldn't speak, and he told me, "This is not the place for you. National Cricket Club is the place for you." So he was actually just doing the sign language and telling me that no, you go there. And luckily my dad was there. Obviously he got me to, I was very young, 17, so, and I didn't have any clue about Bombay. That was my pretty second trip to Mumbai. So my dad also incidentally had the same name when he went to do his research. He's good with that, so he went and he found the same name of that club. And when he showed it to me, I was amazed. So I've always been a believer in destiny. I've been a very, I have my faith that there is something which has always been guiding me. So Bombay Gymkhana has played a part in my journey for sure, and then where I reached.
That's lovely. Ayaz, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, I did mention that this wonderful, imposing, not so imposing, but such a delectable pavilion, and it reminds you of cricket, but also reminds me how difficult it was when I was a youngster to say, how the hell do I get in? I mean, everybody wanted a piece of Tiger Pathaudi, when we were growing up, and I remember, eh, much to my dismay, there was no way you could reach him anywhere except watch him play at the CCI and wonder at some stage maybe I'll be able to get an autograph or shake his hand or whatever. And luck was that if I would have had it, I had a relative who was working in the accounts department in the Bombay Gym. This must have been late 1960s. I must have been 13 or 14. And he said, and maybe he used to be in the cashier in the bar. He said, वहाँ मैं बिल बनाता हूँ और पतौड़ी रोज आते हैं, टाइगर पतौड़ी. I said, रोज आते हैं. So I have to somehow meet him. He says, आपने you can't come to the club. I said, why can't you come? He said, आप member नहीं है. दूसरी बात ये है कि you are underage. So in those days, the more creative youngsters, teenagers, to see adult movies would use the eyeliners, pencils, and all, increase the side locks to get into Rex Cinema or somewhere else where the movies would be playing. And I got through a couple of times. I said, if I can get through to the cinema, I can definitely get through to Bombay Gymkhana. So with this accountant friend of mine who was there, he was petrified as to what he was doing, but he allowed me in somehow. I went in, and there was Tiger Pathaudi sitting there. You know, it was lunchtime or just around that time, cigarette dangling from his lips. And I went in very hesitantly, stuck a piece of paper in his, where he was sitting. I said, "Sir, can I have your autograph?" And without even looking up or anything, he just signed it and went back to whatever else he was doing. And I grabbed it and I ran. So that was when I spoke to Tiger Pathaudi about it. Much later, when I got to know him, he said, "Impossible." I said, "Why is it impossible?" He said that, I always know where I'm signing and I remember it always. So I said, if you want to know, if you want proof of it, I still have it. But that was the end of the conversation about Pathaudi. But Bombay Gym, apart from the passion for getting to know Pathaudi and all, it became as a new professional journalist. Bombay Gymkhana was a venue where, apart from press conferences that I attended, there was Aga Khan hockey, which would be played here, magnificent tournament. The World Cup billiards tournament, I think, was held here at some stage in the early 80s. You had squash matches. So it was in many ways, apart from maybe the CCI, the hub of sporting activity in the city, and not just local local events, but also international events, and it became one of the most coveted places that one would want to come to.
There was aura about the club. I
There was an
remember
aura about the
as a
club.
schoolboy, Adil Chagla, doctor, was the only member I knew. He was my classmate. And he would bring me here to bowl to him for hours in the nets in the 8th standard, 9th standard. Somewhere I think I spoilt my bowling and he spoilt his batting. But I used to come for the lemon barley water and the lunches, because for Maidan cricketers, that was a luxury. And of course, to play on a very good seeming pitch, you learnt a bit about batting. But more so the atmosphere. And, he would know something. Jatin would know because he made his debut when I was captain. And Bombay got a fine player, over 4,000 runs for Bombay. Played a lot of Maidan cricket. And I think coming from Dadar Union and the stables of Matunga, where life was a bit conservative, to say the least. Playing Maidan cricket and then coming and passing by Bombay Gymkhana, playing club cricket at Bombay Gymkhana, and you've got some great stories like your father. And why don't you just fill us in on some of those memories of this great club?
uh, you know, while playing inter-school cricket, my first match for Don Bosco was at Sasanian here, and I remember seeing the Bombay Gymkhana for the first time, and I was like, "Wow, this outfield is like a carpet, literally." And that wicket looks a little bit green as well, you know. But then before I actually played here, I used to come a lot to the Bombay Gymkhana with Rajesh Sanghi, my dear friend. And whenever I used to be at Rajesh's house, the evening would usually end with coming here, having a snack, and then taking a taxi back home.
Some limbu pani.
And in those days, limbu pani. So those trips were more outdoor trips at Bombay Gym. Nowadays, it's we are biased to being indoors at the Bombay Gym. But yeah, those were my first memories. But just thinking back at and things come rolling back into your memory. I first learned about a setup of a cricket match at the Bombay Gymkhana, because as Dada Union, when you arrived here to play a match, whoever was the cricket secretary, I think Nandu was there, or Kailash sir, or Rakesh, or whoever was the cricket secretary would come and say, "Hey, how are you doing? Welcome to the Bombay Gymkhana," and that was not a behavior which was experienced by me at a Maidan match, for example. So there would be a setup, there would be a welcoming kind of protocol there in place. After the game, you were invited to stay back for a drink or a snack. So always felt very welcomed here, and love to play here. I mean, absolutely love to play here. We'll come to that a little later. But overall, I think there was a lot of tradition. There is still a lot of tradition associated with the Gymkhana, and I think that is extremely needed in whichever times you are at. I think that is something which will never leave me.
Of course, we go back a bit to my time in 1933 when Jardine, of course, he's a Bombay boy. He lived in Malabar Hill. If you guys don't know that, he was Bombay boy, born in Bombay, and grew up at Malabar Hill. So when he came back in 33, it was like taming of Douglas Jardine. He had become a softer human being, because I think around that time he lost his the butler who sort of who accompanied him everywhere, brought him up literally, and because his parents had moved to England first. So his butler, I think it was Sher Khan. I'm not sure about the name, but he lost him. He died of a heart attack, and that actually sobered him. So when he came to play here in the test match, when Lalaji scored 100, interestingly, the crowd, there were 20,000 people around the ground, and they came onto the ground, and the wicketkeeper wanted to run out Lalaji because he's out of his, he was obviously celebrating his 100 and hadn't completed the third run, something like that. And Jardine warned him. He said, "Don't do that." No. So for every aggressive human being, there's a softer side, and that is something that is sort of not been highlighted or chronicled in cricket, which is something that we need to bring out, because this is only, I had a long chat with Ramchandra Guha about this, and while he said that he was demonized by the Australians, there was a very softer side to him. And India, England, again, great wars. We talked about Vaseline. Let's hear a bit about Jelly Bean, please.
Jelly bean is a story which actually has got nothing to do with putting jelly bean on the ball. It's something which was about me batting and India scoring a lot of runs. We talking about the Nottingham game. I was just playing in 2006. I was not part of the Indian team. I was that's the Greg Chappell time. So I was not allowed to be part of the squad. Uh, Made sure that I continue with my journey. Went to play county. Played the whole season. Got plenty of wickets. Got my confidence back. Tried few things, and I was ready. I was ready to take on England in that particular series, knowing the conditions very well, understanding exactly what's going to work, what's not going to work. So Lords was the test match where we were in trouble. We almost somehow managed to save the test match. Moved on to the next one. We won the toss. We were bowling. We got them out pretty cheaply, and after that we got plenty of runs. And England being England, they were trying to just kind of find a way of irritating me while I was batting. So every time I was taking a stance, like I would go to tap the wicket and I would come back to take take my guard again. I would see a piece of jelly bean there. So that is something which was happening. I had to make use of it because from the slip cordon, obviously you can't have that good a aim that every time the jelly bean is going to land there. So clearly the guy fielding at square leg was the one responsible for that, which was Ian Bell. But I just thought that okay, now we are in an important juncture in the series, and I always had this habit of if you have to sledge, you got to be smart sledger. You can't just use bad words. You got to be using the situation and switch situation to your advantage. So what I did was I stuck to the rules, which is very important. So I went to the square leg umpire. I said, "Look, this is what is happening. There is someone who is putting the jelly beans here, and it's not fair." So it happened once, it happened twice, it continued like that. So even though I went up to the umpire, I made a formal complaint of that. It didn't stop. So I said, okay, now let's take it to a notch higher because I've already gone to the umpire. I'm completely safe. I can behave the way I want to behave. The umpire is always going to take my side there. So I just basically went to the slip cordon and I said, in very nice words, which gentleman is up to this mischief? And don't quote me exactly because the words were the cricketing lingo. I'm sure all the cricketers here will relate to that. And
We'll
I said,
understand.
I'm amazed that after scoring 500 runs, you guys still have uh, the courage to do these kind of things. So Kevin Peterson loved the limelight, isn't it? So he tried to grab the spotlight and I grabbed him there with my bat there. And that picture is everywhere and it became a big thing in the English media. Then the English media took on the team after the game. Obviously they lost that game. I went on to get Pfeiffer in the second innings. We won the test match, and then the post match conference, I took it to the next level, saying that English players really inspired me to do well by putting the jelly bean there. And that was enough for the Indian team to go on to then enjoy the entertainment which was around happening in the media. So English media was not very kind to the English cricket team. We managed to win the series, and it has been one of the special series which I've been part of, which I feel very proud of.
We've, we've, we've got to thank you for that performance and the jelly beans to have motivated you for that performance. You could just go a little bit back to the reason why we're here in 1933 again. Another interesting anecdote from that is actually in those days, this was a European club. So we, as in we, with a bit of suntan, were not allowed. We had to sit, we couldn't sit with the Europeans in those days. And I think the Maharaja of Patiala was coming here with Anthony DeMello and somebody, I can't remember who because just my memory fails me. But uh, he saw that and he didn't like it. And I think the initiation of the CCI, if you look at it, is from 1933 because I think Bombay Gym inspired CCI to come up. And we had two test stadiums across the roads, and uh, I think that 33 game has a lot of relevance in terms of where we are today versus what happened then. I'd like to ask Jatin one question. While we're talking about Bombay Gym, your dad, of course, was a great storyteller. You could sit with him with hours and hear him talk about the game. I'm sure something's come down to you. So, any interesting stories about this playing here?
Uh, there are two or three hilarious stories actually. I used to play for Dada Union. Mazhar and I would play together for the same team. And for some strange reason, Dada Union had this perennial issue of not being able to make an 11. And usually we would be 9 or 10 and somebody would step in and we would be fine. But this occasion we took it to a absolute low, and we just had 5 players. We just had 5 players for a police shield game, and we went out and tossed, and we won the toss. We won the toss, and with 5 guys, we scored 450. We scored 450, and we wrote the remaining 6 names, because we said they'll hopefully land up at some stage today or tomorrow, because it was a day and a half's game. And they weren't allowed to play. They landed up the next day, but they weren't allowed even as substitutes, and the umpires upheld that. So that's fine. And Bombay Gym scored that 450 in 30 or 35 overs, I think. And we were just five. So a bowler and a keeper and three fielders. I think Rajdeep got 200, and I think Baldy was playing for them. Baldy got 200. It was hilarious. It was hilarious. And
That's a very. I must tell you this because we won the Comrade Shield that year. I think even the gods were supporting Bombay Gym because we played the final against Hindu Gymkhana, which had about 8 or 9 first-class players. I think Jayanti Bhai was there, Kailash was secretary, and it rained in April, or March or April, and we had batted first, and they batted on a Kanga League wicket. But Rajdeep, remembering Rajdeep on that story, he called me to say he got a double hundred. So somebody from behind asked me, ask him how many fielders on the ground.
we were three fielders, and I remember Mazhar bounced him a couple of times. We were so frustrated because I bowled 20 overs and Mazhar bowled 20 overs, and Mazhar bounced him and he surprised him with a couple of those bouncers. I'm surprised Rajdeep hasn't talked about this 200 on prime time.
No, he's talked about it, and he's made me aware that he's got a double hundred, but he didn't highlight 3 players on the ground. He actually told me that it was a brilliant double hundred, and I think I'm playing really well. Then somebody prompted me to ask him how many were on the ground. So he said, no, we didn't stop them from fielding 11. So interestingly, Ayaz, now coming to you, of course, your most competitive India-England series. And I'm going to ask Zaheer this because he's played in a few.
Yeah.
I think Zaheer will have 2009 in mind with Sehwag or 10. I was just rolling my mind back to it. Seven. And I want Ayaz to talk about not that Golden Jubilee test because that was a disaster.
Certainly not the 81-82 series where 65 overs a day were bowled. So that was certainly not the most exciting. That was perhaps the most boring and perhaps a lesson that how Test cricket should not be played. But there have been some wonderful Test series played by these two countries. I was witness to India winning in 2007, which was after how many years from 71 to from 86, from 1986 to 2007 we hadn't beaten England in England, and we beat England in 2007, which was a fantastic achievement because it came on the back of the most disappointing World Cup campaign we've had in 2007 when we got knocked out in the first phase. So that was a terrific series from India's point of view. uh, I think also the 86 series, one must say that to win 2 test matches, one at Leeds, the other at Lords, uh, Dilip Vengsarkar making hundreds in both matches.
Maninder Singh at his best.
Maninder Singh at his best. Of course, Kapil Dev always at his best whenever he played in England. So that was a fantastic season amongst the uh, tours that I really enjoyed watching because there's always more excitement and more passion for your own work when you see the team doing well and beating the opposition on their home turf at their own game. Swaying and seaming tracks and even the fielding where the Indian team fielded brilliantly. So that's been and I also was I thought the 2002 series in England, which we didn't win. I think it ended in a draw, but we saw some fantastic cricket from both teams. Michael Vaughan for England, Rahul Dravid, Virendra Sehwag, Tendulkar, Ganguly, all of them, putting up such sterling performances. I think we've had some great, and I think it's just getting sharper and better. Uh, there's less there's a less disdainful approach about Indian cricket now. Certainly, it's a very competitive team. Earlier, the English players I think were a little patronizing, if I might put it that way. And I must add as an aside that they have still one bill to pay, which Khalid Ansari will talk about if he's here. When they all went to Studio 29, the English team went there. Ken Barrington was the manager in 81, 82, and they they drank till kingdom come and then didn't end up paying the bill, and that bill is still pending. So, and Khalid, of course, is still kind of wringing his hands in frustration, saying they asked me to pay for it, but I never drank so much. It was these guys who drank. But more seriously, I think that cricket has become competitive. What I would love to see at this point in time, I'm just taking a leap ahead, is India playing England at this point in time, with baseball and whatever else. I mean, England is also redefining the way Test cricket is perhaps going to be played in the future. For 500 runs in a day, even Bradman's Invincibles wouldn't have put up that many runs, or haven't, in a Test match. And to score at 6, 7, 8 runs in an over. Yeah, but how would baseball fare in India on Indian pitches is really the crux. And if that series comes, it's not going to come for another year, year and a half. I think after the World Cup, England is going to play in India. And if baseball survives till then, we are always ready on Indian pitches to take on all comers. But that will be some contest to watch.
Lovely, lovely. As Zaheer, let's hear about your great contest. We're, of course, going back to Jardine and CK Naidu, but for you, which was a series that you sort of sit back in your armchair 50 years later and say, wow, that was something I enjoyed?
Well, for me, it has to be 2007. There is no doubt about that. For various reasons. 2002 was I was a newcomer on the side, so the pressure was not on me. It was just about going out there, enjoying the swinging conditions there. The wickets were playing different. As a bowler, you always get excited, so that the touch of over excitement was also there. In that, you make a lot of errors. But in 2007, it was a completely different role for me. Like I mentioned, I had played a season of county, and a lot was expected of me. So when a lot is expected of you, you have that added responsibility, that added pressure as well, which I felt during the Lord's Test match. And the first day, I still remember it was a tough day. I think Kevin Peterson was batting the opening partnership. Cook was also going very strong, and I didn't really bowl that well. So suddenly now, you're planning, preparing so much, and you think that you start doubting yourself. You think that, okay, are you going to be able to deliver? Because on the first day it didn't go my way, and then suddenly on the second day, things started to fall in place. Like I mentioned, somehow we managed to save that test match. uh, the umpire also came for the rescue. I remember clearly, Srishant was dead plumb, and then it rained. So the English weather also supported us, so we somehow managed to save that test match. And then came the Nottingham, where I was over all the nervousness. All that belief was there, the confidence was there. And then to go on and playing that kind of a role for the team was very, very satisfying. It's when things are not expected of you, you kind of have it easy. But things, when everyone is expecting from you that you got to go out there, you got to take the responsibility, and you got to carry that mantle of fast bowling, then that pressure is something different to deal with. And that series, for that reason, was very special for me. And obviously we won after so many years. It's never easy to play England in home conditions. They know the conditions well. They know how to set the game up, and use the conditions to their advantage. When you go a step ahead and counter them with their own style of play, which is relying on the swing, getting the lengths right. And not only me, all the bowlers. Srishant was also there contributing. RP Singh was there. So it was the whole bowling unit which came together, and kind of put England in that scenario where after the second test, they started thinking, okay, we can't play on a saving track against India, and that helps your batters as well. So I think that's the whole game, that's the whole dynamics. And it's very satisfying because of that as a bowling unit we were able to achieve that. We were able to put that kind of pressure on that England team to change their tactics.
I think we've spoken about 2007, 86, but clearly the most memorable series must be the 1971, where we beat England in England for the
And
first
we
time.
have a member of the team here.
We have a member of the team here because, I mean, at that point in time, England was the number one team in the world. They had beaten Australia. Ray Illingworth's team had beaten Bill Lawry's team, gone back to England. India were obviously on a high, having beaten the West Indies in West Indies, and then going to England. But where everybody thought, you can have maybe a flash in the pan, but two in a row, unlikely, if not impossible. But hey, 6 for 30, 38 by Chandrasekhar and Oval Test match. And it just kind of redefined the way Indian cricket, the major turning point for Indian cricket in Test matches certainly was from 1971, the Twin Series, and the way. And Ray Ringworth was like Douglas Jardine reincarnate. He was also a tough guy, unrelenting, wouldn't cede an inch. And to get the better of that England team, which was a very good England team, I thought was a fantastic achievement, and it just set the tenor and the tempo for Indian cricket, Test cricket, to come into its own.
Actually, it was a metamorphosis of the game. When you see Jardine's photographs, he didn't wear an England cap when he played for, I mean, MCC and England. They used to call it MCC when they were not playing Test cricket, and England when they played Test cricket. He wore the Harlequin cap, which is the cheese and tomato stripes, across. And we've got a similar cap. I think I've seen Yajuvendra wear that. Sunny, you played it. You must have worn it for Ranji Trophy and Bombay Gym, and maybe the Bombay Gym cap. And Kailash wore it. 83, the World Cup, every player was wearing a different brand shirt. They weren't even wearing the same shirt. Some had Lord and Taylor, some had Bada Sahab. And over the years, when you see these old videos, and starting from the 30s, 40s, 50s, you see how much the game has changed, even visually. I mean, of course, everything has changed about the game. But Jatin, you've been a part of two eras. You came in the 90s when the game was changing. Then you got into, you've been involved with the game as a selector, and you've been involved with cricket. What has been the stark change that you can see from a cricketing perspective? Because, you've been sort of in between, starting off from the 90s where the game was just getting into the broadcasting era, and then, of course, after that.
Would just like to touch upon the 2007 series. Zach obviously spoke about it from an elite athlete's perspective, because he was coming back into the Indian team basically. So 2007, that series is extremely important from the graph of Indian cricket. Because the dark clouds of the Chappell era were still not out, and then we had that World Cup. Where we got knocked out before in the qualifying rounds itself, and then you go to England, and to beat England in England, that gave the team a different confidence, and then the next year you had the IPL coming in and as well. So it changed India's standing in the pecking order of world cricket, not only from a commercial perspective, but also the fact that, hey, these guys will go abroad and they will beat you abroad. They will beat you in your own backyard as well. And I think that's really, really important. That was an important moment in time. It was very, very important that we had a very good 2007 series in England.
So, ladies and gentlemen, this can go on for hours. I know, and what I like about Bombay Gym and the history is also there's so much banter and camaraderie. Somebody called me up and said, "You have to wear a three-piece suit because this is a really formal." I don't do this on a daily basis, I can assure you. But somebody called me and said, "Please, three-piece suit, penna," because everybody's coming in suits, and I feel so overdressed. Thank you, Aga, for giving me some company. And pardon me. No, but this is supposed to be the way. We are not a European club anymore, ma'am. We're an Indian club. So anyway, thank you so much. May I just thank all our guests, and just thank you for being a part of this lovely conversation. We can probably continue the conversation later, but more nostalgia, and of course, over to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, guys. I would now like to invite our Honorary Cricket Secretary Burzin Dubash on stage to thank our guests with a memento. Can we have Mr. Sardesai to come and accept this honor from our side? Thank you for spending time and coming today.
I think that's, every time I meet cricketers who've, either engaged with dad in some way or the other, coached under him. I mean, they all have really nice things to say. He doesn't get very much in public, to be honest. He never did. Maybe probably preferred it that way. But therefore, thank you so much to Bombay Gym for remembering him. It's been many years, but I'm very grateful that finally he's sort of getting recognition in a public forum as well. Thank you so much.
I was captain for 15 years for Bombay Gymkhana, and my selection for West Indies, we played against West Zone. South Zone versus West Zone. CCI. Then Raj Singh told that Mr. Hatia is coming here. He's the fastest bowler. On 13th January, that is my birthday, he came down and told me, this is gift to you. You are traveling with Indian team to West Indies. That was the great thing.
For me, Bombay Gym has always been like my home. But more than anything else, we always think of the first test match here in 1933. It was a fantastic moment. And when Lala Amarnath got his 100, there was gold chains, there were Mangal Sutras, they were all being thrown around and picked up in the ground. So those were the moments of Bombay Gym, and which Indian cricket should cherish itself. Thank you very much, all of you.
I still remember as a member of BCA courts in 1959-60, I played my first match at Bombay Gymkhana. I remember I was the non-striker, Paulie Umbrikar was batting. He went back and hit a straight drive. The ball was coming towards me. I fell down and I saw the ball one tip and gone to boundary. Had it ball hit me, I would have been at boundary with the ball. Paulie came to me and told me, "Came che dikra, lagi to nathi." And that was Paulie Umbrikar, and that was my first match at Bombay Gymkhana.
Friends, I can tell you that I'm absolutely proud and delighted to have taken that great opportunity and become member of this tremendous institution.
Cricket gave me a reason to exist, but Bombay Gym gave me friends for life, and that is what I value more than anything. Thank you so much. I'd like to just end by saying, we'll all come and go, but I'll end with a small line from Tennyson's Brook. I chatter, chatter as I flow into the brimming river. Men may come and men may go. Bombay Gym will go on forever.
For all of Rajesh's friends to come here for a minute and take a picture.
Thank you very much for taking your time out to be here. Thank you to my three guests for accepting my invitation to be part of Cricket Conversations. Thank you to Sheesh for being the host. Thank you to all my predecessors, cricket secretaries who've played a role in bringing cricket up, here so far, and to all the BG Honor awardees.